Uh, Thank you, Mrs. Amita Sharma and all of the friends for this opportunity. Uh, and thank you. I've attended a number of workshops organized by Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation Ministry as well as Urban Development. First time I'm attending a workshop by MHRD, which is very positive, which is very positive thing. And I also thank Amitabh for mentioning that SPA alumni. You hire anybody, Jurong or Lhasa, eventually people who are working on your projects is from SPA Delhi, and I'm extremely proud of them. Thank you so much for mentioning that. And I am taking you a little backward. I mean, in the broader thing, I'm talking of urban population to 377 million in 2011, only 31% as a whole. But this is not the correct picture because there are many small towns, because small or large villages which are actually urban, but because of definitional reasons, we call them rural. They are basically small towns. And we are talking of 50% plus by 2050. And what we are concluding is there are a lot of number of non-municipal towns. If there are 8,000 total urban centers, there are about 3,000 non-municipal towns which needs a different kind of approach, a rural-urban approach. Urbanization is inevitable. India needs to improve its urban infrastructure and governance to achieve economic objectives. And if we don't do, we are talking of 0.7 to 1% of GDP, we will not be able to achieve and not provide employment. There is a direct relationship between economic growth and urbanization, even at the state level. Wherever there is high urbanization, there is high economic growth. There is a reduction in poverty in India. In urban sector, it is by almost by 7% the last 8 years. But still, the urban poor is 76 million in 2009-10. This is Planning Commission estimates. So we are still talking of lot of poverty in the urban sector also. There is projection of population, but rather than even the number, I want you to look at what is happening in different states. I think different states are different levels of urbanization. And this needs to be considered when we are thinking of future cities. There are some states which account for about 60% of total urban population, which are high urban growth states, which are Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and some emerging states like Madhya Pradesh. And then we have states which are average growth rate, or average urban level of urbanization, and there are states with low urbanization. So this policy of one size fit all will not work for urban sector. We will have to look at states with different level of urbanization, income levels, and how could we strategize them. And this is something which Ministry of Urban Development needs to look at when you're planning the JNRM2 strategy. We mentioned, two of the speakers mentioned McKinsey report. I think equally important and perhaps more important report which has come in the urban sector is Dr. Isha Aluwalia chairmanship report called High Powered Expert Committee, which came out in 2011. We all need to be very conscious and look at this. They're talking of $871 billion of investment in 20 years. They've also worked out in which are the 8 sectors, which is important. But what is actually important, and there is a very key role for IITs and IIMs in this, is there is additional 60% of investment required in operation and management of the new assets. Just creating new assets is not important. We also need to take care of operation and maintenance over next 20 years. And this is extremely important when you plan for this. And a very important role, and issues like skill development and the kind of technology we're talking, and the life cycle, which was mentioned, the cost which was mentioned earlier, needs to be considered when we're planning for these areas. 10 years ago, Ministry of Urban Development did not have many programs and did not have much money. But in last 10 years, a large number of urban projects have come into effect. The most important being JNURM, a reform-linked investment program, one of the largest investment program in the country. Public-private partnership, e-governance in municipalities, market-based financing, that is municipal bonds. As you know, 12 cities have issued municipal bond. The urban transport policy, which shows you these new buses all over the country funded by JNURM, and the focus on public transport, national urban sanitation policy, service level benchmarks. We have now a service level benchmark for all the cities, and 17 cities have already done their estimates. The quality is a question, but the numbers are still there. And then the large scale Rajiv Awas Yojana, and even the 13th Finance Commission has right times the money what the 12th Finance Commission has put in the local body, urban local bodies. The most important program in the urban sector is obviously JNURM. This is a reform-linked investment program for cities. The cities and the state government had to sign an MOU with the Ministry of Urban Development that they will carry out 23 reforms of different kinds, both at the state level and the local level. This is very important to understand. In Indian system, state governments are as important as the city governments. I mean, we still are in a situation where we have 3 levels of government, and state government is extremely important in the urban sector. Projects cost of 100,000 crores, and they had to prepare city development plans and detailed project reports. One could only spend 50% of the money which was planned for this investment. And what are the problems of JNM2? Long-term city planning was missing, something which Amitabh talked about previously. We have inadequate staff. As education institutes, as training institutes, it's very important to understand urban sector has inadequate staff capacity at the national level, at the state level, at the local level, and I am very confident to mention even in private sector. I think private sector is worse than in the urban sector. I get consultants who come with people who are just passed out from SPA only 1 or 2 years ago with little experience as consultants, as advisors. And it's very unfortunate that the urban sector doesn't have enough people. And that is something as we all need to produce both in numbers and quality and excellence. All three is extremely important. There's inadequate project identification, planning, and implementation. We do not identify projects properly. We don't plan properly. We do not implement properly, even when the funding is available. And this whole approach of one size fit all is not correct. We need to work at different types of reforms and projects at different sizes and different contexts of urban sector. And whatever we call as critical reforms is not understood. If you take land, the whole issue of registration, Urban Land Ceiling Act, and the reduction in property excess stamp duty, all has to be seen as one complete context. Unfortunately, we are looking at different reforms as one-liner. And finally, and most importantly, sociology or humanities was mentioned earlier. I think we have not communicated urban messages to common man and to the municipal councillor. And this is something we need to learn. Communicating with the common man on urban agenda is extremely important, something which is totally missing. What are the conclusions? Something which I mentioned earlier, urbanization is inevitable and desirable for India. What was mentioned, Gandhiji's, that India lives in rural areas is no more true. We need to improve our urban sector. We need to invest in urban sector to improve. Definitely urban India offers a number of challenges. But it also offers opportunities, and most importantly, opportunities for employing our next generation. I think we need to have the academic qualification and also the skills for this sector, something which is totally missing. We need to have sustainable, inclusive, that is environmentally conscious urban planning. Inclusive, we can't forget our 30% of the poor, and smart urban planning. And what it means in the planning thing, we need to link urban land use with urban transport. Something which was totally missing. When I studied urban planning 30 years ago, my teachers came from civil engineering to teach me urban transport, and people who taught me planning, who land use, they never talked to each other. We looked at urban planning, land use planning, and urban transport as different two aspects. We need to integrate them together. We need to have mixed land use. We can't have this separate residential and separate commercial thing. And we need to have high densities. A combination of three will give us the kind of thing which Mr. Amitabh and my earlier speaker were talking about, with smart infrastructure. So we are talking of sustainable, inclusive, and smart cities. And finally, most important, need knowledge sharing and partnership among urban holders to learn from each other. One of the things which we all should do as academic institute is learn from each other. As part of this program, we have something called PEARL. I'll request you to look at PEARL program under JNUM, Peer Experience and Learning. We are putting, as part of that, Ministry of Urban Development has put mayors along with mayors, commissioners with commissioners, and there's a website called PEARL where we do good documentation of good practices in this sector, which is helping cities to learn from each other. The time is short, so I'm going to stop at this and we can get back on question answer session. Thank you so much.